Hello and welcome to Super Science Saturdays. My name is Scoggan and I'm the Early Childhood Librarian at Newburgh Free Library, Newburgh, New York. And this is a program I've done at the physical library, designed for ages 5 to 9, but all are definitely welcome. And a special welcome to those of you who have attended my programs in the past. So without any further ado, we'll get started with this month's theme, Greener and Cleaner, what kids can do to help save the environment. One of the things that really hurts the earth is pollution. But what is pollution? Pause the video and talk with a grown-up or someone with you about what you think pollution is. Pollution is anything that makes the earth, the environment, the world all around us, dirty or unhealthy for people and animals and plants. Everything, every living thing depends on the earth, and pollution makes the earth dirty or unhealthy. What kinds of pollution are there? There are lots of different types of pollution. Water pollution, yikes, chemicals. Water pollution in the ocean, like those plastic bags. Shore pollution on the beaches. Land pollution. Air pollution. Noise pollution. Well, pollution is anything that makes our environment unhealthy, and too much noise is unhealthy for our ears. Even light pollution. That's when too many bright electric lights are shining up in the sky. It makes it very hard to see the stars, but also it confuses some animals that need to see the stars and the moon. Some kind of pollution is caused by no trees. When you cut down the trees, the rain can wash the soil away, sometimes into rivers. That's called deforestation. It also means there's less places for animals to live. Grown-ups, there's actually a great video about an experiment you can do to show what happens to the soil if there's no trees and plants to hold it down. And I'm going to link to that video up in the card. Even the rain can become polluted. What are some things that could make the earth, the environment, dirty? Let's pause and think. What are some things? Well, things like plastic bags, paper, litter, chemicals, those are a lot of things that can make the earth dirty. Sometimes farmers, when they grow plants, they might spray the plants with chemicals to keep the bugs from eating the plants. But they do that. Now there's chemicals on our apples. That's not very good for us. And it could hurt a lot of things in the environment. Birds or insects that we didn't mean to hurt. A lot of times that happens with pollution. Let's talk about how a river might be polluted and how a polluted river could affect the animals that live there. So here I have Freddy the fish, and he is going to go into my big bucket of water. We're going to pretend it's a river. This is an activity that I first encountered on a site called The Owl Teacher. And I will link to that down in the description if you want to try this for yourself. So, Freddy the fish is going in the water, and I will show you what he looks like. All right, there's our fish, happily swimming along in the clean water. So he starts to go down the river, and he wants to explore all the places that the river can take him. But as he starts to go towards some towns, he finds something that's not so good. He discovers that there is a spot near some lawns, and the lawns have something called fertilizer. Those are chemicals that people put on the lawn to make the lawn grow more green, but sometimes the rain washes that fertilizer into the river where it doesn't belong. So I'm going to put that fertilizer in the river. Now Freddy the fish doesn't really look happy about that at all. So he tries to keep swimming, but as he swims, he comes to a part of the river where water has washed off during the winter, and they use a lot of salt on the road, special salt to make the ice melt. So in that part of the river, there's still a lot of salt left that washed into the river with the rain. Now Freddy is really unhappy because salt could get into his gills, the part of the fish that lets him breathe underwater. So he can't breathe as well. He keeps going down the river, and he comes to a place where some motor oil has been spilled from a mechanic shop when they were fixing cars, and some of that got into the river as well. Oh dear! Now, our poor fish is covered with oil. Sticks to his scales, makes it hard for him to breathe or swim. He tries to swim faster and faster down the river, and he gets to a place where there's a park. But by the park, there are some trash cans that blew over, and a lot of the trash from the trash pails is in the river with the water and the fish. Poor Freddy Fish. He's had so many different things pollute his river. A lot of the pollution on Earth comes from the garbage that we make right here in our homes, in our families. Unfortunately, people make a lot of garbage. In America, each year, each person makes about 1,600 pounds of garbage. That's more than a grizzly bear weighs. And if we lined up garbage trucks filled with all the trash that we make in America every year, it would reach halfway to the moon. That's too much trash. Well, where does our garbage go once we throw it in the trash can? You've probably seen trash trucks coming and taking the trash away, but where do they take it? Many, many times they take it to a place called a landfill. Just a really, really big hole they dig and put all the garbage in. But it doesn't magically disappear. It lasts for a long time sometimes. If I had something like a piece of paper, it might start to break down after about 2 weeks. Some kinds of garbage is what we call biodegradable. That means they kind of fall apart and go back into the earth. And they turn into things that are okay for plants to grow in. They're okay for the earth. But other kinds of garbage are not biodegradable, which means it takes a really long time for them to fall apart. And they don't really disappear the same way that biodegradable things do. It's important for the earth that we use things that biodegrade or fall apart and go back into the earth as quickly as we can, and not things that last a really, really long time, because then our garbage is just hanging around. So, I have an idea to show us how long some things that we throw away really stay in those big holes in the ground in landfills. So I have between my fingers here one tiny grain of rice, just one grain. And we're going to pretend this one grain is a year. So this one teeny speck is pretend from your birthday all the way through the entire year until it's your birthday again. Is each little one grain. So if I have, let's show you my table here. If I have something like this, like a carton, a juice box, or a paper milk carton, that's going to take 5 years to biodegrade. So I have 5 grains of rice here. 5 years. That already sounds like a long time for something that's garbage to be hanging around. What if I had a can? A soup can, once the soup's out of it, how long will that hang around? Well, that will hang around for about 50 years. How about batteries? How long will they take to disappear? Well, they'll take about 100 years. I've got my little scoop here. 100 years for that battery to disappear or to break down into the earth. What about a disposable diaper? If any of you have little brothers and sisters that wear diapers, If you throw that yucky diaper away, it's going to be around for 100, 200, 300, 450 years. Now, they didn't have disposable diapers hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but if they did, a diaper that finished breaking down this year in 2020 would have to have gone into a landfill in 1570. That's a long time ago. What else lasts for a long time after we've thrown it away? Well, fishermen, they use those plastic fishing lines, and they last for a very long time in the ocean when the fishermen lose them. They last in the ocean for, let's see, can you take a guess how many years? 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 years before that fishing line will break down. Unfortunately, a lot of animals in the ocean get tangled in those nets, and it's very hard for them to break out, and the lines don't break down so fast. Fishing nets, too, they last a very long time. What about a plastic water bottle? There are definitely a lot of these on planet Earth. If I drink all this water and I throw the bottle away in the trash, it's going to be around for 100, 200, 300, 400, around 450, maybe even a little longer, depending on the kind of water bottle that you have. What about a glass bottle? Or maybe one of those shiny balloons you get at a birthday party that's like looks like shiny foil? How long until they break down? Well, let's get our rice. I actually ran out of rice. For a glass bottle, it's around 1 million years. And those shiny balloons might never break down. So you can see it's important for us to try not to use or buy or throw away things that are going to be in the garbage for such a long time. So now that we've learned about what pollution is and how bad trash can be, what can we do to help it? What can we do to make the environment greener with plants and cleaner, not so much garbage? You may have seen on different packages or signs something that looked like 3 green arrows in a triangle. Those are the 3 R's, the 3 ways we can help the environment, and they stand for reuse, reduce, and recycle. Let's put our first arrow up here, reuse. So I could reuse something. When I'm done with a piece of clothing, I could give it to someone else. They can use it. Or I could take something that would go into the trash and make a craft project out of it. For example, I have this paper towel tube here, and I have covered it in peanut butter and rolled it in bird seed. And you can make a bird feeder. You can make a bird feeder out of milk cartons too. So you could take something you would have thrown out and make it into something useful. I could reuse a cup like this that I only have to buy once, and not a water bottle that I have to keep buying over and over and over again. If you had a refillable bottle that you used twice a week instead of buying 2 of these bottles every week, you would stop 156 pounds of carbon dioxide. That's a gas from going into the atmosphere. There's lots of carbon dioxide in the air, but it's when we have too much that's a problem. And making plastic makes too much of that gas. So you would stop a lot of that gas from getting into the atmosphere at the factories by not buying and throwing away so many plastic bottles. Plus, you would save over $100 by not buying the water, since you only have to buy this once. Another way I could reduce is by not using so much wrapping paper. Every year we use about 100,000 trees to make wrapping paper for gifts. We could use something like this tin and use it over and over again for a gift. Or we could wrap a box one time and wrap the lid separately and then reuse that box over and over, because it's really the giving that counts. So we could reduce the things that we use and be happy with the things that we already have. Maybe you can learn how to make things or fix things that are broken. So we can reuse. The second arrow we have here is reduce. So reducing means we're trying to make it less. Make less garbage. So how could we reduce the amount of garbage that we make? We're going to put on our second arrow. Well, we can try to buy things that don't have a lot of extra packaging all around them. So at the store, I could bring my own bag and put apples in those and not have to bring a plastic bag to carry my apples. Or if something has a plastic container and a paper container, extra garbage, so look for things that don't have so much packaging all around them. We also could buy things, for example, like when I buy clothes, this is a dress that's made out of cotton and linen. Those are things that will break down and go back into the earth, and the earth can use them again. So when I'm done with this and when I give it to someone else, everyone's done with it, it's too old to wear, then that won't be in a landfill for hundreds of years like we saw before. Not like these dancing pants. They're made of something that's, it's like a plastic really, even though it feels soft. So these are not going to break down and go down to the earth like that cotton and linen dress. So we can reduce garbage by trying to buy things that will fall apart and go back into the earth soon, instead of things made out of plastic. If you can find things that are not plastic, that helps a lot with the earth. What are some things that we can keep out of the garbage? Well, before I mentioned that some things break down and go into the earth, and for example, this is a little stem that's left over from making kale. The stem really isn't that good to eat. So I could do something called composting. So I take a container and I take all my scraps from when I'm cooking, or a banana peel, or maybe some flowers someone gave me that are not so nice anymore, and I can put them in a bin outside, and then things like bugs, worms, and bacteria will eat all of that kind of garbage because it's natural, and they'll turn it into dirt. Dirt that's really good for growing new things in my garden. So now I have less garbage and a good garden. For the compost, in the compost pile. What else could I do to reduce pollution on Earth? Well, I could buy an apple that came from a farm that's right near me. There's a farm that's not very many miles down the road from where I am right now, and if I bought apples from there, then I can get the apples easily. They didn't have to put this apple in a truck and drive that truck really far, and that puts gases into the atmosphere. You've seen cars, if you stand behind a car, it smells stinky. You don't want to stand behind a car or a big truck because it makes all that smoke. So more trucks bringing our food from far away means more smoke in the air. But if you buy food from close by, then it hardly has to go in a truck at all. Not a lot of smoke in the air. So that's another thing you can do. Another thing is not to drive your car so much. So if you can share a ride or use your bike or walk somewhere, that helps the environment too. Not so much pollution in the air. What about turning off the lights when you're not using them? That saves a lot of electricity, and that means we have to use less energy. Using less energy means less factories that make energy that we call power plants. The power plants, they make pollution. So if we use less energy, we make less pollution. If we buy light bulbs that are good for the environment, we save half the energy. Also, computers. Now, Sometimes I forget to turn off my computer at the end of the day when I'm not using it, but if I turn it off, then I save enough energy that I could use the same amount of energy to print 500 pages off my printer. What about saving water? Get my water over here. When I was younger, I used to think, well, how can I waste water? If I turn on the faucet, the water comes out of the ground, and we had a well, so it came out of the ground and it came out of the faucet. And then I thought, well, isn't it going back down into the ground? So how is it being wasted? But it takes energy to bring the water up from the ground and to make it clean. So we don't want to waste that energy. And some people have water that comes through city pipes, and that takes energy for them to clean the water and bring the water to your the place where you live and bring it up to your sink. So when you don't want to waste water because you're wasting the energy too. Okay, so here I have a gallon of water. And I wonder how long would it take if I had a faucet that was just dripping a little bit, drip, drip, drip. How much water would that waste? How many of these gallons? I'm going to get a glass of water here. So I'm going to pretend that this dropper is my leaky faucet. So even if it only dripped this slow, ready? Drip 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, drip. Even if your drip is that slow, only one drip every 12 seconds, then every year that wastes 173 of these gallons of water. That's a lot of water wasted just from one tiny drip. And if it dripped faster, you'd waste even more water. So that's one thing you can do is go and check your faucets and make sure that none of them leak, because that's one quick way we can save energy and stop more pollution. Sometimes you may hear people talk about reducing your footprint. I mean your carbon footprint. This is an actual print of my foot. But what they mean when they say reduce your footprint is not make a smaller picture of your foot. That means you want to make the amount of energy that you use to do things smaller. So you don't have as much impact on the earth. You don't create as much pollution and you don't use as much energy. What about our third arrow? Reuse, reduce, and recycle. You've probably heard of that or seen recycling bins maybe around your school. Maybe you recycle at home. So what is recycling? That's when we take something old and we make something new out of it. So I might take this can and I put it in the recycling, and it gets taken to a recycling plant, and they melt this can and they use it to make a brand new can. And that's especially helpful because it takes a lot less energy to make a new can out of an old can than to make a new can from the beginning. If I have a aluminum can like this one, I could make 25 cans recycling with the same amount of energy as making one new can. So that's a big reason to recycle. It helps us a lot. And now let's have a sample of The Berenstain Bears Don't Pollute Anymore by Stan and Jan Berenstain. So this is a book about how the Berenstain Bears hear that there's pollution in Bear County. It might seem as though everything looks fine, or there's just a few wrappers here and there. It doesn't seem like such a big deal, but let's see. Brother Bear has to do a report about endangered animals that are being hurt by pollution, so that there's not very many of those animals left. The books he had taken out of the school library weren't very helpful. Of course, the kind of shape Bear Country was in wasn't as simple as Papa made it seem. How Bear Country looked depended on your point of view. It looked fine from the Bear family's front stoop, It looked even better if you had a bird's eye view while flying high above the earth. But if you had a squirrel's eye view, you were finding fewer and fewer acorns because too many of the trees had been cut down. Bear country didn't look so fine. If you had a duck's eye view, you might think the professor was right about pollution. That's Professor Actual Factual. He's helping them out in this book. And if you had a fish eye view, you might think things were downright awful. Here's 6 plastic rings that come on cans. Animals can get stuck in those. So the bears go to visit Professor Actual Factual. He put a story in the evening news about pollution, trying to warn people. Did that evening news story do much good? Asked Brother. Not much, said the professor. The idea that bear country is in serious trouble because of pollution seems to be hard to get across. To grown-ups, maybe, said Sister. But we understand, and all of our cub friends will too, because we're the ones who'll have to live in a messed up, polluted earth when we grow up. Professor, said Brother, how does this sound? You come to our school and explain all about pollution to the cubs of bear country. Maybe we can do something about it. Actual Factual was impressed. I'll give Teacher Bob a call right away and arrange it. And that's what happened. The cubs were all eyes and ears as Actual Factual told them about the trouble bear country was getting into. First, he taught them 3 important new words: ecology, conservation, and recycle. The way the professor explained it, ecology means how all the creatures, plants, and the earth itself works together. Conservation means not wasting the valuable things of the earth like water, oil, wood, and metal. And recycle means finding ways to use some of the valuable things over and over. Just what we were talking about, recycling. Now you might think, I'm just a kid. How can I help with saving the earth and stopping pollution? Well, there are some kid environmentalists, young people all under 14 years old that have been doing amazing things. So I will link to that article down in the description, grown-ups. You can take a look. One of them is a boy named Cole Reisenberger. And when he was only 9 years old, he started fighting against big companies, fast food companies, using too many trees to make their food wrappers. He talks to the bosses at McDonald's, and he was able to convince them to use paper that had been recycled into new paper for their food wrappers. So that saved a lot of energy because McDonald's uses so many food wrappers. Then they were able to save a lot of paper by recycling it. Finally, I want to talk to you about Earth Day. Earth Day is every year on April 22nd, when we celebrate ways that we can help the Earth. You can be a part of it too. It started 50 years ago. And in 1970, people realized that they needed to do more to try to help fight against pollution. Many laws were passed to try to fight against it, but even some children came with brooms to help sweep and show that they were dedicated to cleaning the earth. So this year, April 22nd, Earth Day is coming up very soon. So if you would like to participate in the Super Science Saturday Challenge, think of some way that you and your family can help make the earth greener and cleaner. You can email me your ideas or pictures at sscoggan@rcls.org, or you can bring the pictures or lists or ideas to the library when we reopen on Grand Street at Newburgh Free Library. And I look forward to hearing from you and how you are going to help the earth. And thank you for watching. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to turn off my computer and save some energy.